Andy, my dude, have you heard of the magical website builder known as Squarespace?
Ugh, not another Squarespace ad. I feel like every podcast is sponsored by them.
Hey, don't knock it till you try it. Yes, okay, it is overhyped, but actually it lives up to the hype. Squarespace is like a website fairy godmother. With a click of a button, your site transforms into a beautiful masterpiece.
A website fairy godmother? That sounds interesting. What makes it so magical?
Well, for starters, those slick templates make anyone look like a professional web designer. Pick one, customize the colors and fonts to match your brand, and voila. Plus, the drag and drop fluid engine is so easy, your grandma could build a site on Squarespace.
Well, she did knit me a lovely scarf last Christmas. Maybe website design is next.
Exactly. And when you're ready to sell your Nana's handmade scarves online, Squarespace has built-in e-commerce. Add a store with one click. Get flexible payment options. Then watch those sales roll in. And when she wants to teach others her steezy scarf skills, Squarespace's new courses feature is just the ticket. Nana can set up her curriculum and enrollments and payments in a snap and become the next e-knitting influencer.
Oh, wow, you really sold me with the grandma angle. Sign me up for that free trial.
Just go to thenextreel.com/Squarespace and transform your site into a beautiful Squarespace masterpiece.
Well, thanks, Pete. Even though it's overhyped, Squarespace actually sounds perfect for Nana's site's needs. Appreciate the warning on the ads, though. I'll brace myself next time I listen to a podcast.
Anytime. Let me know if you need any help getting that site up and running. Andy, can you believe we've almost hit 700 episodes of The Next Reel?
I know, it's crazy. And with all the other episodes in our family of podcasts, we are well over 1,200 episodes of movie conversation. It's really pretty amazing that we've gotten to have these in-depth movie chats every week for over a decade now.
And we couldn't have done it without our loyal community of film fans. Their support over the years has meant so much.
For sure. That reminds me, we should give the merch store a shout out. Buying shirts from thenextreel.com/merch is a great way listeners can continue to support the show. Plus, they get to sport our great designs.
Absolutely. I think sometimes folks forget we have a variety of shirts, mugs, phone cases, and more available. In fact, a great place to start is with a shirt sporting the Next Reel's logo.
We also have that classic Fast Times Spicoli Surf School tee, or the weirdly popular Rusty's European Tour shirt.
The one from National Lampoon's European Vacation. Why is that so popular?
Search me, but we have sold a ridiculous number of those. I guess there are a lot of Rustys taking trips to Europe?
We're always adding new designs based on movies we've covered, like our brand new design for a streetcar named Desire, featuring a streetcar named Desire. So if you want to rep your love of TNR and films, head to thenextreel.com/merch.
Every purchase helps us continue to have these weekly in-depth conversations. So visit thenextreel.com/merch today.
And as always, thanks for listening and being a part of the Next Reel community. We've got lots more great movie chats coming your way. Okay, I don't even know what trailer I put in the links. I think I did the right one, but you're sort of the magic guy with the right trailer for these international films.
It's funny that you say that. I didn't even check on this one to see if there was a different Argentine version. But this one did have, it was in Spanish, and it does mention the director's other credits in Spanish. Like Damián Szifron, it mentions, Los Simuladores, Hermanos y Detectives, Tiempos de Valientes. So it's obviously directed at a market that will recognize those titles,
I liked it.
Yeah, it's a great trailer. And the use of Hungarian Rhapsody, number 2, is a fantastic piece of music for a manic trailer like this, or a manic story.
Yeah. What's interesting about it is that this is an anthology tale, but I'll tell you, this trailer felt so much like a single film. Like it was sort of betraying the fact that this is an anthology story, and I can't quite put my finger on if that's a good thing.
I think it's a great thing. I think it gives you a sense of cohesion with it, and I don't think it would matter really if you'd go to the theater and find out that it's an anthology film. It actually, in retrospect, I actually wish that I had gone and looked at some trailers for some other anthology films just to compare to see, like, are they kind of defining the anthology element within the trailer? Mm-hmm. Or are they doing it like this, where it's just kind of makes you feel like it's one story and you're just kind of not really sure what really is going on? I don't know.
Well, I come at it from the perspective of not generally liking anthology movies as much. And so this, I feel like, had I gone into this movie and not liked it, I would have felt like the trailer was sort of a betrayal. Like I would have thought I was getting one movie, and when I didn't get one movie, that's not cool. As it stands, I did enjoy Wild Tales, and I liked it because I think the trailer celebrates what does connect all of these elements together. That this is a story of a bunch of just normal people who kind of go crazy, and the trailer kind of celebrates the frenetic nature of that craziness. As they kind of lose it, even though you don't really know what the story is,
or stories are.
Right.
Yeah, certainly. You do get little bits and pieces, but yeah, you don't really get a sense that it is, or what any of the stories are really focusing on. If anything, though, I feel like the title might hint at
you're right.
Wild Tales.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, so we're probably getting tales. I mean, it could be a single film, but I don't know. I have a feeling that it was probably marketed, in a way where people knew it was an anthology film. You're right. The trailer doesn't define that, but I don't know. For my money, I think they made an effective trailer that certainly piqued my curiosity.
Yeah, absolutely. I was in.
But I'm also an anthology film lover, though. So
you're a lover?
Lo que te estoy proponiendo me avergüenza y mucho. Pero nos conocemos desde hace años y siento que tenemos esta confianza.
¿Trabajo o placer?
Las dos cosas, espero.
Dale, salame, móvete.
¿Qué te pasa, hermano?
Buenas noches, ¿uno solo?
Veo que sos buena para las matemáticas.
El acta de infracción dice que el auto estaba mal estacionado y eso se considera prueba suficiente.
Papá.
¿Qué pasó?
This is The Next Reel, everybody. I'm Pete Wright, and that over there is Andy Nelson.
Hey.
And we spoil movies. Tonight on the show, we're wrapping up our series on the works of Argentinian actor Ricardo Darín with the 2014 black comedy anthology film Wild Tales. Before we get into that, you should learn more about us at thenextreel.com, subscribe to the show in your favorite podcast app, or follow us on Twitter and Facebook at The Next Reel.
And if you enjoy this show and are interested in supporting our ongoing work investigating great films like this one, please consider a regular donation through our Patreon page. You'll get to join our back channel conversations on Slack, listen to the members-only weekend show, and get better chances of being part of our Listener's Choice episodes. We have one coming up next week. Just head over to patreon.com/thenextreel.
¿Qué violencia? A ver. Yo estoy describiendo una realidad. No, ¿dónde está la violencia?
Andy, before we start talking about the film itself, I already said that I'm not generally a fan of anthology films. I'm sort of on the side of the fence where, if you go to a movie, you want to go to a movie. And so I would love it if you would open us up with this, with your thoughts on why anthology films can be great. What is it that makes them great?
Well, I guess that's the question: is what makes an anthology film good? It's there's got to be a sense of cohesion with it. I mean, we've only talked about one other one on the show thus far, and it was Creepshow, which obviously is all kind of it's a horror. It's all united with that very comic book sort of feel, done in kind of a style that feels like we're reading kind of a pulp comic book. And
it was that visual piece that tied it together very much, right? You already know you're in the genre, and the comic book ties all of these stories together. It's a very visual and stylistic kind of connective piece.
Exactly. We've got those great stylistic, like moments where at the start and end, it almost like it turns into an animated frame. And you get that sense that this is really a comic book story. And I think it really works well there. There are, other successful ones. They're not always directed by the same people. I think that there have been other successful anthology films where each segment is directed by a different director. I think that can happen. But I do think that there is something to be said for anthology films like Creepshow that are directed by the same person. It has the same vision, and you get a better sense of that cohesive tissue between the stories that just makes them feel a part of each other. And I think, just the visual, the narrative, the style, the music, there are so many things that can kind of help, or thematically also, that can kind of help connect it. And this is certainly a case where I feel like having one director, Damián Szifron, directing the whole thing helps. It all, even though each of the stories kind of has a different visual language, I think that they all still feel like they are done by the same person. And thematically, I think all 6 stories definitely feel of the same world. So it's tricky. I mean, you compare something like this to something like ABCs of Death or VHS or some of the anthology films that might not be as good, and you can really see some of the quality that can stand out when it's done in a way where it's actually connective. It's not just 6 random stories stitched together.
Well, and that I think is what makes this film, enjoyable. I was frustrated when I heard. I didn't even know when we picked this film that this was an anthology film. I had no idea, and so I was actually frustrated when I heard that, because what it means is I'm going to go to this thing. We're doing this movie on the work of Ricardo Darín, and I have to sit through 5 other shorts in order to really see, what he brings to the table in this film. And I was frustrated by that. I was not interested in it. I think this film sets itself apart from other anthology films that I don't like, because I do get the sense that, as you say, they take place in the same world. All of these things I feel like could exist in the same world, from the weird coincidence piece Pasternak in the beginning, to the wedding that might as well be going on the ground right below them, right? It feels to me like they're in the same. They exist in the same universe. And second, they're all telling these stories of vengeance that sort of waver between subtle and deeply unsubtle, but actually tell their stories in a way that ties them together. Right? There's that thematic connection that I think it does make it feel like it's more of a piece. It might have satisfied my inner audience member to have some sort of a bumper at the beginning and end that connects them, somehow, that they really do exist in the same space. But as it is, I appreciate that this was Szifron sort of giving us a collected works, but all on the same theme. And that actually does make sense to me. And I was able to kind of jump on the bandwagon.
Well, and I think that's why it ended up being such a successful anthology film, is because these stories are ones where people kind of go a little crazy. And I mean, Szifron himself says, society is full of people who repress themselves and thereby become depressed. We fantasize about what we could have done, what we should have said, and we argue to ourselves with an imaginary enemy who is no longer there. But some people explode. This is a movie about those who explode, and we can all understand why they explode. He says it's the fuzzy boundary that separates civilization from barbarism, the vertigo of losing your temper, and the undeniable pleasure of losing control. And in all of these stories, you kind of have a situation where somebody is in a situation where they're pushed to their limits and they get to explode. And they don't necessarily all end up in a good place by the time we get to the end of the stories. But it's very kind of cathartic to watch these people go through their stories and go, okay, I feel like that tension has been lifted, because we've all been in these situations, maybe not all of these situations, but certainly situations that might be slightly familiar. And it's like, it feels, it gives you that sense of pleasure of seeing somebody kind of do what you've always thought of doing.
There's this moment in every one of these pieces where it moves from like I've been in this situation, I have felt the way this person is feeling, to escalation, to go, to sort of play out what would have happened if I had actually flipped that guy off on the road and he was crazy, or, if I had been amongst this group of people who had all somehow wronged a guy who then became an airline pilot, like that. It goes from that bit of coincidence to insanity. The pivot in each case is, it's so fast. It happens so fast. And I think that mirrors the experience of life when you realize, oh my God, I just did this one thing. This is chaos theory. I just insulted this one guy or got my car towed, and now I've lost my job and I've lost my family as a result of this one tiny thing. A butterfly flaps its wings, and suddenly in New York, I've got rain instead of sunshine. So I really appreciate the way the way he plays with he plays out my inner Pete for me on screen in each of these stories, and it's most of them end up really scary, knowing that I am that close to being in that position. Do you want to walk through each of the stories briefly? Just what what was your favorite?
Absolutely. Yeah. Let's look at that. And we should just real quickly say before we jump into this, this weekend on our Saturday matinee, which is for Patreon members, we are all going to be talking about some of our other favorite anthology films. So it should make for an interesting conversation.
Yes, absolutely.
So first up, we have Pasternak, which is, as you already said, the story of an airline pilot who, or I shouldn't say it's about him. It's about people on this plane who realize that they all have this common connection, whose name is Pasternak, and they realize over the course of their very brief flight that they've all wronged him in some way. And then they realize that Pasternak is the pilot, and he's planned this. He got them all onto this plane, and he pretty much takes them all down.
Yeah, that was not great. That one, see, and that's what I think it opened with, much more of a feeling of grim, sort of fatalism. A la kind of Black Mirror. It felt like it was going to be, and it sort of set the tone of the film in a way that some of the other stories didn't quite live up to. I expected it to go much more, to be much more around technology, around, this guy is turning technology into something, monstrous. And so I thought that was interesting. The next one is Las Ratas, the rats. Yep. And it is a young woman is working at a restaurant, and a patron comes in, and it turns out this patron is a mob boss, and he is through his efforts, her father actually killed himself years before, and so she is confronting who she believes is essentially the murderer of her father, and she has to wait on him. And it ends up being a story of poisoning and murder, which is delightful.
With the fantastic cook,
yes,
who's just like, who's been to prison, and she's not afraid to
care.
Go back.
Yeah,
no, that was great. Third story is El Más Fuerte, the strongest. This story is about a driver who, he's got his nice car. He's cruising through the country trying to get back to where he belongs, and a little car is blocking the way. It felt very much like Duel for a little while.
Yeah.
He's trying to get around this guy, and the guy's purposefully blocking him. He finally gets around him. He flips him off, yells at him, and then he drives on. Unfortunately, he blows a tire right next to a bridge, and while he's fixing it, this guy shows up and pretty much starts going at him, and it goes pretty crazy. These two, it turns into quite the battle, and ends in, I think, what I felt might have been my favorite resolution of the story, with their burned bodies, charred, embracing inside the remains of the vehicle after it blows up.
I love how it's that final thing. How did it happen?
What's your theory?
Yeah.
Crime of passion.
Crime of passion, because they look like they're hugging each other. I thought that was it was really grim. The fourth one is with our hero Ricardo Darín. It's Bombita, Little Bomb, and it's the story of a man who he just keeps getting his car towed, and he takes it as a great personal affront that the city has not painted the curbs, and yet where he is parking as no parking zones, and yet they continue to tow his car and make him pay, and eventually he makes them pay. Unfortunately, he is an explosives expert, and his job is to bring down old buildings and do so in a controlled way. And he does, as we'll see, eventually ply his trades against the towing company.
Next one is La Propuesta, the proposal. In this story, it's the story about the son of a rich family who comes home. He had been drinking, and while he was out in his car, he accidentally hit and killed a woman, and a pregnant woman, and he's horrified. They're not sure if they know who did it, but his dad has his lawyer come over, and they work out this whole plan where they say, okay, they're going to figure out who did it because they have the security cameras. They'll know whose car it is, so we need to come up with a plan quickly. And they basically come up with this deal and talk their landscaper of like 20 years into taking the rap for the son, because they know the son won't be able to handle it. They're going to give this guy tons of money so that he can take better care of his family and all this stuff. And the deal goes back and forth, and it ends with finally the deal being settled and the groundskeeper going out to take the rap and be arrested, only to have the woman's husband, the victim's husband, kill him right there at the end after this whole deal that they put together.
Gruesome. And the final story is Hasta que la muerte nos separe. Is that close?
That's all right.
Bite me till death do us part. And it is the story of what happens when a bride finds out that her new husband has just cheated on her while they are in the middle of their wedding dance, and he invited the woman with whom he cheated to be a guest at the wedding. And she proceeds to, shall we say, lose her cool, and the wedding falls apart. And all of the sudden, she begins to exorcise her demons on him and the guests and the cook, This is it's not my favorite one, but I think it has the most interesting resolution for the film, because it goes back to something we talked about with what was the second movie we did that I liked so much.
Son of the Bride? With
Son of the Bride, which ends on a deeply, wonderfully romantic note that is otherwise in a gruesome film. And this one, they end the film kissing and doing it on the table where the cake is, and
well, the guests are like,
we should go. This just got weird, and I think that's an interesting way to end these stories that don't have a good solid resolution. So we can talk more about that. But of these six, which one spoke to you the most?
I really enjoyed. I did enjoy all of them. Actually,
you don't get to do that. You don't get to chicken out.
I'm not chickening out.
Oh, you're chickening
I'm just saying I didn't not like any of them. I liked all of them. El Más Fuerte might have been my favorite because it was just I don't know. I loved that battle between these two strong-willed people who are going to, best each other in this battle of the automobiles on the road. And I thought that had the kind of the funniest little twist at the ending there. Las Ratas might have been my least favorite of the bunch. I loved Pasternak. I really liked Bombita, Ricardo's one. It had a slower vibe to it than the other ones did, along with La Propuesta. I think both of those were a little more slowly paced. But I don't think that there was anything wrong with that. If anything, it felt like, you needed kind of to give a little roller coaster, some ups and downs and everything. And Hasta que la muerte nos separe, I think that one, it wasn't one of my favorites, but like you said, in retrospect, it ended up having a real twisted ending, and the way that it resolved, I think, like you said, it was almost perfect for this film, because it's that crazy connection that sometimes there is with people in the world. And so I kind of like that. But I'd say El Más Fuerte was probably the one I enjoyed the most, just because it was really funny.
I think for me, the proposal, La Propuesta, is probably my least favorite, because I just found his turn, the father's turn. We're going through the story, and the you think it's the story of getting the son off, but it turns out it's the father we're following here. And it's at one point the father, who's clearly a wealthy man, he is so tired of the lawyer and the policeman and everybody who's investigating. They're all taking a part of this bribe from him, and they keep turning up the dollar amount, and eventually he says, "Screw it, son, go turn yourself in. I'm done." I found that that was the first piece in this whole thing where I felt like that's not how it would play out for me. It's not. I can't put myself in this scene. I get it. I get the story he's trying to tell, but I couldn't relate to it. And the other ones I absolutely could relate to. So I think The Proposal is probably my least favorite. Bombita is definitely my favorite one of these, because it's the one I could relate to the most. Right? It's that feeling when, you just, in the back of your mind, you feel like somebody just pushed over a domino, and it's hitting another domino and another domino, and things continue to fall, and you feel like they're just out of your control. And in this case, one rogue towing incident has put him in a space of, losing his wife and his family and all of these things, and to make just horrible choices as a result of the first domino being pulled down. It's interesting, that one too, though, because it ends on a weird up note, right? That in fact I guess he's in prison at the end, and everything sort of slows down, and his wife, I'm guessing it's his ex-wife at this point, and daughter bring a cake, and all of the everybody's applauding for him, and he becomes this sort of Robin Hood folk hero. And so, I find that a really interesting turn, that all these horrible decisions actually end up making him quite famous in his own way, and rediscover sort of the things that are most important to him. But that scene where he is, he's in with the lawyer, and they're doing their divorce, right? They're having their first meeting with the judge and opposing counsel, and he screams, "What violence?" I could totally relate to that, right? He's not naturally a violent person, and yet he's driven to this point of the tea kettle is starting to scream, and so I find that I could really connect to that.
Well, and that, I think, speaks a lot to what we get in a lot of these stories, is this almost a thematic kind of criticism of the way there's these divides between people, and in this particular story, it's really this divide between kind of the government and corporate, just the way that kind of has corrupted our society, the way that they rule, and have turned it into this Brazil-esque world without seeming like we're in Brazil. I mean, in Terry Gilliam's film, not the country, where it just feels like bureaucracy has gotten so ridiculous that this is what it's become. And it's this man against the machine sort of story where it's like, he is going to turn into this Robin Hood and fight, and you get this sense of all the news clippings at the end, toward the end of the story, that reveal, hey, this is this guy who's become this somebody who's going to fight the system for us. And there's even a hashtag Bombita Libre Ya on the screen of all these different things, save us Bombita and all this sort of stuff, where it's like, and it's even turned into this like cultural phenomenon down in Argentina, where it's like a thing where people, regularly say now. It's a catchphrase where they say, I am Bombita, down there. It's kind of like us saying going postal. And I think that says a lot about this particular story. And I think the other ones do too. It's especially La Propuesta about definitely that divide between the rich and powerful and the poor. I mean, here they are taking full advantage of this gardener. Now he falls in because it's all about the money.
Well, the statement that the rich actually, if just being rich, you can be not even part of a political system, you can sentence a man to death.
And that's it's just kind of a horrifying situation. And it makes you wonder at the end of La Propuesta, like if we take that story further, obviously they told this guy that, he can never talk to his family about this. And Dad, it's all about the money. I have a feeling if we continued that story out further, that he would pay off the cop and his lawyer, but he would not give any money to the gardener's family.
Yeah, right.
I think that he would, because for him, it's all about the money. He'd say, oh, it's a tragedy. I can't believe that he did this. And that would be the end of it.
Right.
And it's just sad. And I think all of these different stories do have this divide between people. I mean, Las Ratas, you've got the mafia guy and the woman, and how the mafia guy was kind of controlling that town. Pasternak, obviously, just, how one person is affected by so many people in their life. El Más Fuerte, you've got the rich guy in his car, and the kind of the hick, as he calls him, in the junker. And then there is, I know they mentioned it, I can't remember the specifics, but in the last story, how the bride and groom are kind of from different social classes.
Yeah, it's the groom comes from great money, and she, when Erica Rivas is, I would say, probably my favorite performance in the film, even though it's not my favorite story of the set. She's amazing as the bride, so Romy, and she has a speech where she says she tells him off and says, how much she hates him, and that she's going to take him for everything. She's going to stay married to him legally and take him for everything, every product that her daddy has put his name on. She's going to take him for all of the money for those products. And so you get this sense that he's from a big, rich sort of maybe manufacturing company, or and that she knows how it works. She's letting on to how it works. I love that.
Absolutely. And I think that is going back to what we were talking about initially about anthology films. I think that's something that Szifron tapped into when he kind of came up with this idea to put this story together and kind of write these 6 tales that all did have this thematic thread. And I think that's why it resonates with people. I just think that it was really a really strong anthology film.
So talk a little bit about the backstory. How did Szifron bring these together?
He had been doing a lot of TV series, directing and producing and stuff. And then I think from what I read, it was about 2007, he kind of took a break and just really kind of focused on his writing. And with a number of other projects that he was working on, bigger projects, he started writing short stories, as he said, to let off steam. And over time, he realized that all of these shorts were kind of related. And he initially had done 12 stories. And then as he kind of realized what he was going to do, he kind of pulled out what he called his wildest ones. And he said that, I think 3 of the stories, he said is the second, third, and fourth, which would be The Rats, The Strongest, and The Proposal. He said actually, it's an interesting 3. Like I would have picked the second or fourth as ones, but he says they're partially based on real life situations that he'd gone through. I don't know what sort of mafia or proposal sort of situations he might have fallen into, but it's like, it makes you wonder. But he realized that, by taking these stories, what he could do is connect them. I mean, he saw the thematic connection, and so he kind of cut out everything except for just the central conflict, the climax, and he just put it all together. And I think that was really smart. And then it was actually the two Almodovar brothers, Agustin and Pedro, who they had seen his 2005 film On Probation, and they had wanted to work with him, and so they all came together, and here is the film.
Well, it's a wonderful film, and I think I do enjoy it more than I expected as a result of some of these things. You want to jump into the deep scene dive?
Yeah, let's.
This is what I'm calling affectionately the final toe. The final toe, right? That's good. I wonder if they did that, if they were on set saying, okay, it's time for the final toe. I like to think they would. It happens right about 56 minutes into the film. This is in Bombita, and this is a place in the film where Simon comes out of where it was supposed to be an interview for a new job, where he loses it with the poor receptionist and refuses to leave his resume with the receptionist because the person he was meant to see is, she says, out to lunch, but he says, who eats lunch at 4:00 in the afternoon? And so he swears at her and walks out, only to find that his blue Chevrolet has been towed again. And that's where we pick up. So the sequence, nobody's speaking in the sequence. This is Ricardo Darín. It starts where he has sort of an out of body experience. Would you agree? It's kind of a characterization of him going kind of over the top.
Very much so. In fact, this is what you would call the turning point, right?
It is. Yeah, and it starts with, the first shot, which I think is a beautiful shot, up angle on him, but we're underneath the sewer grate, and all we see is his face, and flapping immediately in frame is the red ticket that is glued to the curb to indicate, hey, your car was towed. And his face goes blank. And that's how he exists for the next, couple of minutes, I guess minute or so. I'm not sure exactly how long it is, where everything slows down. We move first to the ATM. He puts his card in the ATM machine, and then we have another angle, and we're behind the keypad on the ATM, looking out at him. The keypad is opaque, so now we can see through it, and we see him punching in his code. This giant finger punching in his code, which is another beautiful shot right behind this element that takes us into another world. So behind the sewer grate to behind the ATM, he goes to the towing place. We know now that he's just getting cash to pay off the tow company, and everything gets much slower, and it pulls out, and he's just sort of autonomically pulling bills out of his billfold and giving it to the checker at the towing place. And the camera is pulling back to reveal that there are people in different stages of grief over their car. And some of them are in the stage where he was already, where he is, frustrated. But the woman right in front is also just sort of pulling money out. And it ends up just sort of showing how he's moved into a different space.
We go from that to, we see a kind of a dark building, and we see him kind of parking and pulling in, and then you got this great shot from inside the trunk with this lone street light over his head. So you just kind of get this backlit version of him as he's packing stuff into his trunk, and then you see that telltale blue light start flashing. And you realize, oh, that was the light that he turned on at the beginning. That was for his detonator switch that blows the bombs up. And we pretty much have an idea as to what he's about to do. Meanwhile, as all this is happening, we have the fantastic score by Gustavo Santaolalla that is, it's Bombita's theme. It's Aire Libre. And it's just this it feels very Ennio Morricone. It's kind of got this children's choir, it's all in slow motion. Everything feels so deliberate right now as he's putting stuff in his car, and then we see him deliberately got kind of that great GoPro shot attached to the front of his car as it deliberately parks in a yellow painted zone. Then you see him in a cafe eating his croissant, watching the car as it gets towed away. He asks for his check. Then you see it getting parked at the at the tow place, and then you're inside and you're seeing a woman complaining about how these guys are criminals and everything. And then, of course, the big explosion goes off and shatters all the glass, knocks them over, rips the roof off the building and everything. And that's pretty much it before we kind of cut to all the newspaper clippings as everything gets sorted out.
I'd like to say it was hard for me to think about a deep scene dive this week, but this one, it really just sort of jumped out at me once I finally watched the entire film, because of, first of all, where it happens in the movie. I mean, it's smack dab in the middle of the movie, and two, because to me this represents that turning point that we've been talking about, where the inferiority complex turns into a superiority complex. This is a guy who is taking control of his life despite the consequences he knows will ensue. And it celebrates kind of that emotional feeling that exists throughout all of these stories of retribution and vengeance, of the satisfaction that comes, the dark satisfaction that comes from actually, getting the last word in, and taking that bit of control back and feeling empowered again as a result of doing something grand, making a grand statement. And this sequence and the way it is shot, by Javier Julia, and the way it is edited by Pablo Barbieri, Carrera, and Szifron himself, it is to me representative of the entire film in just a couple of minutes.
Well, and what's so nice about this scene is when you look at some of the other people's turns, this is such a quiet turn. Mm-hmm. And I love that. It works so nicely with this character because, I mean, you brought up that moment earlier when he's frustrated at his wife and he's like, what violence? He kind of like he's having these outbursts. He's blowing up at the system. Mm-hmm. And what is so great about that, which is great because he's a demolitions expert, what's great is here we get to this point where he's kind of, it's almost like he's accepted his fate. Not only his fate that his car is going to get towed because this is how the system works, but he's also accepted his fate that I am going to take them down. And this is I have the experience, I have the know-how, this is what I meant to do. And he becomes this Robin Hood, as you called him, and it's just, but it's so deliberately paced, and I loved that about this. Paired with that fantastic score with the editing mm-hmm. and the slow-mo camera work, and just some of the creative camera shots that they throw in here, it really just lends to this tone that defines exactly who Simón is as he's going through this transition and becoming this kind of folk hero.
And it's sort of a gift to the audience here, right? Because when it slows down, this is not a sequence that you have to figure out, really. I mean, you kind of know where it's going. Because they've done such a great job of setting us up about him being a demolitions expert. Something's going to happen involving demolitions later. But the rest of the stories in this thing happen at such a pace that you're kind of keeping up. And this one is a piece where it gives the audience just a couple minutes to stop and reflect, to stop and really experience what he's going through. You don't have to keep up with the narrative. You're not racing to keep up with the action in the car sequence. You just get to stop and experience this along with him. And I think that that ends up being and it comes at a place in the film that is that gift. It's that gift that says, this is an anthology movie, and every one of these individual pieces has its own sort of narrative pace. But the film as a whole, we want you to stop and reflect on these messages right now. And I think after this, you're in a different place emotionally to experience the rest of the film than you were before it, right? It for me, it leads to new sort of internalized awakenings about what this film is really about, and it makes me ready to accept what comes later in a different light. And I think that's really expert pacing.
It really is, and I think that's something else that feels like, I mean, when you pair all the different stories together, it ends up feeling very much like Szifron had an understanding of how the pacing of the film should go and the movement of the story. I mean, normally, film is going to have its 3 acts, and you kind of have, the different beats that you're going to be hitting. It's a little trickier to do that with an anthology film. And I think if you look at some anthology films, you're really not going to get that. It just, they might try to figure out, okay, well, if we put it together in this order, maybe we'll kind of build the tension over the course of the film. And that can work, but it's not always the most effective way. I think what's happening here is you're getting this fantastic moment of transition in the story that builds to, I think, what you might say are more of the complex stories, right?
Right. It's almost like you need this milestone, right? You need this break just to review. This is like your quiz before the last term, This is that thing you need to be able to stop and reflect and understand so that you can internalize what comes next.
Yeah, because both The Proposal and Till Death Do Us Part, I think, have just a lot more meat. I mean, you look at, Pasternak is just kind of short, silly, quick, exciting. It just does that. The Strongest is just, I think it's just over the top fun. The Rats, I think, it might fit a little more toward the end, but it's not as complex a story. It's just a short little revenge tale. I think Bombita is really a great transition point, and this scene is that great scene. Altogether, I feel like this was just a really fantastic sequence that does a great job of defining so much of what this whole film is about.
One of the challenges of a film like this is that it brings with it a giant cast, and their work is sort of unrelated to one another. We don't get to see these fantastic actors, they're in such a limited world, but it is a giant cast, and we want to just do some shout outs of some of our favorite performances.
The first person that I really would say that I clicked with was Rita Cortese as cocinera, the cook in The Rats. I loved her attitude. I loved her willingness to kind of go through with this crazy plan of just, let's kill them. Yeah. Let's kill the rats, that whole thing. And even at the end, the resolution of the story, pretty much taking the rap for this whole thing, saying, hey, I love jail. It's, I have a great time. I don't have to worry about anything. I'd rather be there. And she takes the rap of this whole thing, and off she goes. I loved her performance. I think that she was really, for me, like the first real bright spot in this film. I
agree. She was fantastic. I think in the Rats was a great section. Julieta Zilberberg. Zilberberg, what a fantastic name. As Moza, she was the daughter, and Cesar Bodon as Cuenca were both fantastic. Cuenca, is that it? Oh man, my Spanish is not existent. The Road to Hell was just 2 actors, Leonardo Sbaraglia and Walter Donato, as Diego and Mario in the race to hell, to their final embrace as charred carcasses. Leonardo, I thought, was fantastic because when he turns, like, he's so empowered when he's in his car, and every time he's out of his car, he's just a mess of fear, and that even holds at the end after he's had this experience of being outside of his car and being in this point of terror on the abandoned, on the side of the road. I think he's just fantastic when the hick shows up and, he gets back in his car and has to sit there and watch the guy defecate on his windshield. I mean, just the way he sinks down in his seat as he's watching this happen. And you have to say that was a very well-placed camera.
I guess you could say that. You could say that. Did you recognize Leonardo Sbaraglia?
No. How should I have recognized him?
He is Tomas. He's the lead in Intacto.
No way. Oh, my goodness. I do.
I certainly wasn't expecting to have him pop into something that we were talking about in our Ricardo Darín series, but there he is.
Oh, it's been a long time.
I know, it really has been.
That's terrific. Who's next? Obviously, we've talked about Darín.
Yeah, I think Darín is just, I mean, he's really fantastic. I've actually taken to watching other Darín films that I can get a hold of, and I've seen a couple so far. And I've got to say, these 4 films that we're watching are not just the only good films he's been in. I mean, he is an actor. I mean, we could continue this series and just have an endless bounty of great performances of his to watch. So
Yeah.
lots of good stuff. But yeah, Bombita, he is fantastic. And what's great about that is obviously it's something that's connected with him because his Twitter handle is at Bombita Darín, which is just fantastic.
Moving on to The Deal, we've got a couple of good performances. Oscar Martinez, Maria Oneto, and Osmar Nunez as the lawyer.
Oscar Martinez is the father. He is the one who kind of is has the money and is having to put this whole thing together, and goes through quite a ride up and down. I really liked him, and I actually liked his transition in this because I thought, to me, it spoke really maybe not so much honestly of the real world of what a real father would do, but I thought it spoke pretty clearly about the power of money, and when you're in love with your money more than anything else, what you're willing to let happen, you know. So I thought that was pretty interesting, and I enjoyed him quite a bit in that film.
Maybe that's why I can't relate to it.
Right. La Propuesta, that's what we were just talking about, but we had, was it Herman de Silva? Was he the groundskeeper? Casero? Yeah, Casero. Herman de Silva.
Yes.
Yeah. I actually really liked him too, because he seemed like this guy who's just so put upon by the world. And I thought that said a lot, but I liked how he started shifting. It's like, hey, I overheard, if they're going to get more money, I want more money. You know, this whole thing, it's like, man, it really does just turn everybody.
Finally, we have the terrific Erica Rivas and Diego Gentile.
Yeah, Gentile, I guess.
Gentile, okay, as Ariel, as the couple in Till Death Do Us Part.
You already talked about Erica. She is the crazy, brilliant performance that really, I mean, I almost feel like they wanted to end it with this film because her performance is so strong, and it's such a positive, I guess you could say, resolution. She and Diego were actually a perfect pair.
Yeah.
They were so good together. I loved them.
I did too. I thought it was fantastic, and so it actually makes a really interesting sort of combination of films and some great individual performances across them. As you've already mentioned, produced by Agustin and Pedro Almodovar. Yep. I gotta slow down. I'd be the slowest Spanish speaker.
What's funny is that Argentine Spanish is so different than the Spanish that I know. Like, I try to just listen to what they're saying, and man, it is a challenge. It is just so strange. It's like it's almost like its own language.
Truly.
Not only did we talked about the phrase "I am bombita." Bombita has become a real popular catchphrase in Argentina, but I think it's funny that Erica Rivas, from her story, people still stop and ask her to say, "Film this for me, Nestor." Film, just like. That was a great moment. It's like, film this, come on. And the poor camera guy.
I'm going to watch this with my kids.
This is like so.
So good.
Good stuff.
How did it do in award season?
Really good. Really good. This film had 44 wins and 54 other nominations. It was very popular at the Argentina Academy. They had 21 nominations, which just seems crazy to me. But I guess, I think here in the States, the most has been 14, I think. Wow. They had 21 nominations, 10 of those wins, 11 the other 11 were just nominations. For the wins, it won Best Film, Best Director, Best Actor. Oscar Martinez, who we just mentioned, was in The Deal, The Proposal. Mm-hmm. Erica Rivas won Best Actress. Herman de Silva won Best Supporting Actor. He was the groundskeeper. Best Original Screenplay, Best Cinematography, Best Editing, Best Music, and Best Sound. So great work. The other nominations were Darín. He was nominated for Best Actor, and Leonardo Sbaraglia was nominated. They both obviously lost to their fellow nominee Martinez. Rita Cortese was nominated for Best Actress, but she lost to Rivas. Diego Gentile and Osmar Nunez were both nominated for Supporting Actor, and they both lost to fellow nominee De Silva. Maria Oneto was nominated for Best Supporting Actress. Interestingly, she lost to Erica Rivas, but for a different film that she was in the same year called Aire Libre. And then Walter Donato and Diego Velázquez were nominated for Best New Actor. They both lost to Pablo Pinto in the movie From Tuesday to Tuesday. And then Art Direction, Costume Design, and Makeup. They all of those lost to a film called The Games Maker. At the Silver Condors, the Argentinian Film Critics Association Awards, it had 7 wins and 4 other nominations. It won for Director, Supporting Actor Martinez, Supporting Actress Rivas, New Actor Diego Gentile, Music Editing and Sound, and then nominations. The film lost to Refugiado, Supporting Actress Rita Cortese lost to Rivas, Screenplay lost to Refugiado, and Cinematography lost to Jauja. Here in the States, it was nominated for Best Foreign Language Film, but lost to the Polish film Ida. And then looking at Darín, I think it's just, the nature of some anthology films, you don't quite get as many nominations. He only had 2 nominations total for this one and did not end up winning anything. But still, it was a very popular film.
Very popular film. Great competition across the entire cast. How did it do at the box office?
Well, to tell his wild tales, Szifron was given a budget of $3.3 million, which is about the same in today's dollars. After its premiere at Cannes in May of 2014, the movie premiered in Argentina on August 21st, and like all of Darín's films we've talked about in this series, it became a critical and commercial success. In fact, it sold so many tickets that it quickly became the most seen Argentine film of all time in the country. Now, I've seen some disputes online as to whether this film actually beat out Leonardo Favio's 1975 film Nazareno Cruz and the Wolf to become the highest grossing Argentine film of all time, because it's a bit unclear as to whether people are basing this on how much money it made or how many butts it got into the seats. Regardless, it has been seen the most by the most people in Argentina, and it's either first or second as far as the highest grossing film in Argentina. Either way, it beat The Secret in Their Eyes, which we discussed last week. To say the least, it was a success. As for here, the movie had a limited release February 20th, 2015, opposite the Duff Hot Tub Time Machine 2 and McFarland USA. It went on to make $3.1 million domestically and $23.9 million internationally, giving it a grand total of $27.5 million in today's dollars. That gives the movie an adjusted profit per finished minute of $198,000. Quite the string of successes that we have talked about for Mr. Darín.
Yeah, that's amazing. The guy is really, what an incredible box office draw. I just find it so hard to believe that we don't see him in more English language films.
Well, maybe he's just not interested, like we've said before.
Yeah.
What I do find interesting, if you look at the projects that he has brewing, I think he actually is filming a project right now with Oscar Farhadi, who is the Iranian? He's the Iranian director who did A Separation and The Salesman. And he keeps winning Oscars. He's like a really, really great director. And he's working on this movie called Everybody Knows. IMDb says, Carolina, a Spanish woman living in Buenos Aires, who returns to her hometown outside Madrid with her Argentinian husband and children. However, the trip is upset by unexpected events that bring secrets into the open.
But look at that cast, Andy. Oh my goodness. Penelope Cruz, Javier Bardem, and Ricardo Darín. Are you kidding?
Yeah, I cannot wait.
Yeah, no, I'm very, very, very excited about this film. That should be fantastic. And it looks like just sometime in 2018 in Spain.
Yeah, it's filming right now. So it's still a little ways away.
That's one to look forward to. I think it's probably time, Andy, because I don't know, nobody can hear quite what's going on your end, but you are really sick. And there has been a lot of muting and coughing and heck, I think we should hurry up and rank it. I'm worried you're going to melt.
Before I die.
At least the show will be complete.
I'm doing my best, man.
That's right. Let's head over to flickchart.com/thenextreel. When you're there, you can find our list of all the movies that we've talked about on this show. And we're gonna go ahead and throw Wild Tales into the mix. I actually prefer the other translation, right? I guess it's closer to maybe the Spanish Savage Tales. That feels better to me.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. And let's see how it stacks up on your list.
And that actually reminded me, before we jump into this, how fantastic were the opening credits with like all the wild animals.
Oh,
and everything.
So good. Yeah.
I just you just said that about Savage and everything. It just totally struck me. It's like, I loved the opening title sequence.
Yeah. I was actually bummed that there's no art of the title write up on these titles. I thought they would have been worth it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. Well, first up, we have Wild Tales or Hot Fuzz.
Well, that's not a great block. But I think I'm going to go with Wild Tales.
I am really torn on this one. I'm going to say Wild Tales, though.
Yeah, I think before our conversation, I would have gone with Hot Fuzz, but I'm liking it even more now.
It's sat really well with me.
Yeah.
But here's a hard one though: Wild Tales or Shaun of the Dead?
Shaun of the Dead.
I am saying Shaun of the Dead. Yeah. Wild Tales or Mother?
I'm going to say Wild Tales.
I think I am too. Wild Tales or Ronin?
Ronin.
Wild Tales or Glengarry Glen Ross?
Well, I'm a big lover of Glengarry Glen Ross. I think it's possible I'm going to go with Wild Tales.
Wow. I was not expecting that. I think I'll go Wild Tales also.
Crazy.
Yeah. Let's see. Wild Tales or 12 Monkeys. Got to go 12 Monkeys. Wild Tales or For a Few Dollars More? This is the one you always wonder. This one is your favorite.
Yeah. I think
I'm saying For a Few Dollars More.
You are? I'm really on the fence. I was about to say Wild Tales, but I can be swayed.
You'll be flexible.
Let's consider me swayed.
Okay. Wild Tales or Das Boot?
Das Boot.
Yes, definitely.
But I would love to see Darín on a submarine movie.
All right. Well, that puts it at number 111 on our chart. 111 out of 326.
That's pretty good.
Spot.
Yeah, that's a pretty good spot. Where did it end up on your personal list?
My personal flick chart, it ended up landing at 628 out of 3871, which is about an 84%. So I think that's, it's pretty high for this one. I feel pretty good about that.
It actually performed much, much higher on my own flick chart list than I was really surprised. And I think it didn't run into some of these movies that, had it run into Shaun of the Dead, it would have been in a different place. Had it actually, I think Shaun of the Dead's higher than it here. But it just, it ran into some easy picks and it put it right at 71.
Wow.
On my flick chart list. That puts it at 93%. It did very well. It really surprised me at just how well it did as an anthology movie, since I'm just not a huge fan of anthology movies. Mostly because, and I think that's the challenge, when I started looking for anthology movies for our Saturday matinee coming up this weekend, and it turns out it's a little bit of a struggle because there are so many horror anthologies that they tend to sort of swamp the narrative stories. So it'll be interesting to see how that shakes out. But this one, man, I really enjoyed it, apparently.
I think it's a fantastic one. People who love anthology films should check it out. People who don't necessarily love them, like Pete, should still check it out. It's a really well-crafted story. 6 stories, well-crafted film, definitely worth checking out.
And what does this do for your Letterboxd ranking over at letterboxd.com/thenextreel?
I think that it ended up at a 4 and a like for me.
Yeah, it's a strong 4 and a like for me too. Although maybe I should put it higher now that I'm looking at my flick chart. I'm feeling like a flick chart says it should be 4.5, but I think a 4 and a like, that's going to be enough. I think we're in violent agreement.
I think this could turn into a 4.5 down the road when I revisit it. I just felt it so enjoyable. I had an absolute fantastic time watching it.
Yeah.
I've had an absolute fantastic time with this series. This was one of the most thrilling series because I knew nothing about Ricardo Darín going into this series. And coming out the back end of the series, I'm like, this is a fantastic actor. Everybody should know who he is and should be watching his films because he's just mesmerizing on screen. And I've already added every Darín film that I can find on Amazon and Netflix to my queues so that I can just keep watching more of them. It's a fantastic actor, and I definitely hope one day we can return to him to watch more of his projects.
I really do too. I think that would be great to throw in a 2018 Darín series and just keep going back to the well. I have been so disheartened by the number of people I talk to about Darín who say, maybe I'll get to it. I don't have any patience with reading subtitles. That makes me so sad, because that means it's just shutting the door on a truly terrific talent. So please give it a shot. Where would you put, of these 4 movies that we've talked about, where would you say people should start?
Well, that's a good question. It really depends on the person, but I think The Secret in Their Eyes is my favorite of the bunch. I think it's just such a well-crafted tale. It's kind of a detective story. It's a love story.
Yeah.
I think there's some nice elements for people to latch on to.
Just a little bit of gruesomeness, but it goes by pretty quickly.
Yeah, right. That for me, I think, and it also just feels fresh and modern. Everything about it just felt really good. I would say that one, but I mean, I could certainly also say Nine Queens, because it's a thrilling heist, film. That con job that they pull.
I think those two are probably the most accessible for the broadest audience. Although the sort of the quieter story in Son of the Bride, right? The sort of midlife crisis story and the love story between it feels good. It feels good the way that film resolves. And so I think you get something out of all of these. But between Nine Queens and The Secret in Their Eyes, I would probably go for The Secret in Their Eyes. Just the thriller aspect of it. If you're a fan of films like Silence of the Lambs, if you're a fan of those kinds of investigative films, this is going to be one that you're going to connect to. And Darín is at his best.
Yeah, absolutely.
Where do we go from here, Andy? This is it. So what's our next thing?
This is it. Yes, we are. We're going to be before we kick off our next series. We have, as I alluded at the beginning, our listener choice episode with Mel down in Melbourne. She is going to be joining us for a few minutes to chat about one of her favorite childhood films, Labyrinth, and that's what we'll be chatting about next week. Looking forward to that one.
Outstanding. And I do have on the midweek show. I was supposed to go live this week, but with Thanksgiving and all in the U.S., we should say this. Happy Thanksgiving.
Yes.
With Thanksgiving, I didn't finish it. But I do have a conversation with Ethan Siegel, Dr. Ethan Siegel. He's a fantastic science communicator, and he has just written a book called Treknology, The Science of Star Trek. So I'm going to be releasing that next week. That'll be our second episode next week. So you can get a sense. I just thought it was a really nice way in parallel to the launch of his book, as we wrapped up our mega epic Star Trek series on this show, to have a conversation with Ethan about the science of Star Trek and ask him some of the nerd questions that stymied us. And I have to tell you, it's fantastic. I hope I'm not alone. I deeply enjoyed this conversation, and I hope you get something out of it, because what he does in this show is he paves a path toward a scientific rationale that actually makes all of this stuff, all of the challenges that we had, real. Like, there is a world in which all of those things could exist. And that's what he does. It's great. The book is great. I hope everybody takes a time to listen to that next week. So there you go.
Fantastic.
Excellent. So that's what's coming up. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. Hope you are, if you're in the U.S. If you're not in the U.S., we're thankful for you anyway.
That's right.
That's what we do. And I think that's all we have to say on this one, Andy. When the movie ends,
our conversation begins.
Amazon giveth, Andy.
As Amazon always doeth.
I have a brief sentiment from Dr. Richter, who gives it a 1 star, as you might predict. And she says, this film is stupid and obscene. Andy, is there anything in this film that you found obscene? Oh, yeah. Oh, of course. How could I forget? In fact, as we mentioned, there is a scene where a character defecates on the windshield of another character's car. That's true.
Right, which you did mention. Yeah.
I did mention that. I guess that could be, you would probably classify that as obscene.
That might be what bothered Dr. Richter.
But really, I mean, to sink a whole film to 1 star because of the pooping?
Yeah.
You don't sink a film because of the pooping.
That should be on a t-shirt.
Don't sink a film because of the pooping. What's yours?
Well, I've got a 1 star by Peter. It says, if I wanted a TV series, I would have watched a TV series. There is no connection between any of the stories. This is not a movie.
Part of me says, yeah, that checks out.
Yeah. See, that's why I'm Peter.
Yeah.
I wonder.
Lies. Happy Thanksgiving, Andy.
Happy Thanksgiving, Pete.
Happy Thanksgiving, Amazon.
It's hard to believe that we have been having in-depth weekly conversations about movies since 2011.
You're telling me producing this show week after week requires a ton of work behind the scenes. If you'd like to help support our efforts, one easy way is by using our originals page when shopping for books and movies we've covered.
Just visit thenextreel.com/originals. Your purchases made through our links give us a small commission at no extra cost to you and allow us to keep having these great conversations.
I was so excited for our big Star Trek film franchise series this season. All those movies adapted from Gene Roddenberry's original 1960s TV show.
As a huge fan, I know that you geeked out over analyzing the adaptations.
Absolutely. From the motion picture to the Kelvin timeline films, seeing the Enterprise crews on the big screen was a dream come true.
Our list of source material isn't just all books and plays. We have the original series in our list of source material. You can rent the episodes to watch and enjoy and support the show in the process.
For our Millennium Trilogy series, we covered films adapted from the original books that launched Lisbeth Salander, The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, The Girl Who Played with Fire, and The Girl Who Kicked the Hornet's Nest.
As much as I love Fincher's version, the original Swedish versions are the way to go. We also did our Die Hard series in season 7.
I can't believe Die Hard and Die Hard 2 were adaptations. 2 of the greatest action movies ever.
Well, one of them at least. The other is awfully fun, though. We revisited the classic Mary Poppins for our 1960s movie musical series. A spoonful of sugar always helps the medicine go down.
Old Boy was intense for our Park Chan-wook Vengeance trilogy, and East of Eden and Giant were highlights of our James Dean series.
And a fun time travel mind bender with Predestination to cap things off.
Find all the books behind these adaptations and more at thenextreel.com/originals.
Dive into the source material for your favorite movies. Check it out today, thenextreel.com/originals.